Okay, welcome back to the Downtown Den. Mark Williams, part two. How's things, mate?
Hi Chris, how you doing, mate?
Very well. I think it was about, was it 6 weeks ago since we last did this?
Oh, now you're asking. Yeah, at least. It
Yeah,
could.
yeah, it was probably,
I think I'm into week 10 of lockdown because I locked down slightly before lockdown. So
yeah, it was probably about 8 weeks ago then, wasn't it?
I think we've officially been locked down for 8 weeks. So it was probably 7 or 8 weeks ago.
And how are you finding it at this stage then?
Uh, Business keeps me busy. Thankfully the continuity strategy that we implemented has meant that we've been largely business as usual. And I've been particularly busy in the partnerships world through this. It keeps me going, if I'm honest, because outside of that, I was getting a little bit fed up of the weekends being a bit like Groundhog Day.
Yeah. I think everyone's in the same boat, mate. The last time we talked, Mark, we talked about the bounce back, which sort of the Chancellor alluded to. Since then, he's made comments about it actually being a severe recession. So has that altered anything that Western Union Business Solutions are going to be doing as a business? Do you want to just give us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll share some. I'll share some thoughts. I mean, at the moment, there's obviously quite a lot of noise out there, and one thing that we're really trying to do is cut through the fog a little bit, cut through that mist, and provide clarity of information. Because if you turn to a different media source, you'll hear a different perspective and a different story. And you're right in that Rishi Sunak did come out and say that we were facing what was looking to be an unprecedented recession, unlike anything that we've experienced previously, purely because, of course, this situation is very unique, and like nothing else that we've faced. It's been quite refreshing to see a number of businesses beginning to re-emerge from lockdown. I don't know whether you've noticed it personally where you are, but I've certainly noticed that there seems to be a rush hour again now, and particularly in the construction and manufacturing sectors, which of course were directly referenced by Boris Johnson the other Sunday as industries that can't work from home. The building sites seem to be a lot busier than they were previously. And even just walking through Manchester city centre, it's evident that a number of businesses have either reopened in some capacity or are making preparations to do so. That and the local councils have been very busy getting some much needed roadworks done. The roads have been quiet. But for the first time during my morning jogs, I've actually had to stop and wait for traffic to go past before I cross the road recently. So it's certainly getting busier. In terms of looking at the recovery, what was hoped, and I think what I outlined in the previous webinar, was that through some of the content that was produced with our partners at Oxford Economics, there was an anticipated V-shaped bounce back or recovery from this. And I mentioned that we were being led down the path of a very deliberate recession for health preservation, for welfare, and the measures that have been taken to preserve businesses and employment as much as possible through these challenging times. And I think that some of those initiatives have been open for debate and others have been incredibly successful. As we re-emerge from that, it's looking increasingly unlikely that we are going to see that V-shaped recovery. And the concept behind that was that, you know, if we go down that very steep decline, economic decline, then as much as in the short term it's going to hurt, it doesn't have enough time to really ingrain and impact on the economy, and should bounce back very, very quickly as hopefully business bounce back and the economy gets moving again. we're looking like that's going to be slightly slower. And the most probable outcome and the best case scenario in reality is the U-shaped recovery, which means that we're probably going to flatline economically for a little while, and that it's going to be a more gradual process to come out of that. I think every industry sector is facing its own very unique challenges and having to undertake various risk assessments in preparation for when they can reopen again, and ensure that they can still adhere to social distancing, and that they, their staff and their customers can remain safe whilst they start to operate again. That's going to create some capacity issues in a number of sectors. It's probably going to impact on, you know, what turnover would be versus a normal environment. You know, this so-called new normal, it's a term I hate because it makes it feel like it's something that's here to stay. I'd hope that it's a temporary normal, not a new normal, and then we will get back to the normal that was looking quite positive at the start of the year. But the U-shaped recovery is something that's looking quite likely. Another potential outcome is the W-shaped recovery. And this is where there is no guarantee that we might not suffer a setback. In the event that we see reintroduced, in the event that we have to go back into lockdown because the numbers start to peak again, then that's obviously going to impact on economic activity, because those businesses that have been working to reopen may then find themselves in a position where they have to close again. So we could well see this W shape before we get to the end of that. And the worst case scenario, which is frankly unthinkable, is the L-shaped recovery, which is a long depression, which could go on for many years. Hopefully that is, you know, that is looking like it's not overly probable at the moment. It's I think it's something that is probably been planned for from the government's perspective as a very worst case scenario. But at the moment we are looking like we are transitioning from what was hoped to be the V-shaped recovery to the U-shaped recovery. And there'll be a few different factors involved in that. Of course, the last 8, 9, 10 weeks or so have been highly volatile, very uncertain, quite concerning for many. And the impact that it's had on businesses and in the financial markets has been somewhat unprecedented. We saw 35-year lows for the pound against the US dollar. We've now seen somewhat of a recovery for that as optimism starts to creep into the markets in terms of recovery. There was a story today, just for the record, today is the 21st of May, but there was a story today that the government are expecting there to be widely available antibody tests on the conclusion of a deal with Roche, who obviously have developed those. So these good news stories are creating some optimism within markets. We saw PMI data come out this morning, which actually showed a minor improvement on the data from April, which is positive, and I think lends itself favourably to the reality of this is going to be a slow recovery, but a recovery nonetheless. Yep. Things are starting to move in the right direction. One of the measures which we've probably not seen complete visibility on the true impact it's had yet is in relation to unemployment. We saw the Q1 unemployment data, which only really took into account the very start of the pandemic and the coronavirus crisis. There were close to 1 million new unemployment claims. It was announced last week. I think the true scale of unemployment is yet to be seen, and the concern around unemployment, of course, will be for staff coming back, re-emerging from the furlough scheme, and whether the furlough scheme has done its job and preserved their jobs, and that there is still employment for them, and that those businesses are in a position to be able to retain that staff and return to market and to business in full capacity. But unemployment is clearly a concern. A lot of the global hopes of recovery sit on a vaccine at the moment, and the successful production of a vaccine. One thing that I would cautiously lean toward on a vaccine is it's not necessarily the be all or the end all. It's critically important, yes. However, it's critically important subject to the demand on it on that time, and subject to the capability to mass produce, and how long it will take to get that vaccine to market across the United Kingdom and across the world. It's not going to be an overnight thing. From the point that the vaccine is, successfully found or discovered, we could be looking at a 12-month period before it can be mass produced to, get out to everyone broadly. So, a vaccine remains very important. Something else that's been quite interesting, and probably the final point that I'll mention on this, is around potential negative interest rates going into next year. There was a supposed leak from the Bank of England last week, which suggested that there was potential for further interest rate cuts below the 0.1% that we've seen currently, which has received some criticism that was an action that was taken perhaps too early, but that we might see negative interest rates next year. Negative interest rates is something that has now actually been factored in and priced into many markets. It could well be that it was a strategy to create a manipulated movement in expectation and in certain pricing. So it might be something that has come out and already served its purpose. It's not a guarantee that we'll see that. But of course, negative interest rates and potential future debt defaults are something that financially are of concern as well, and will remain in highlight. All in all, I think that we are seeing positive movements toward recovery. I think everything suggests that we are in that transition from what was hoped to be a V to a U. Businesses are slowly beginning to re-emerge. I had a call this morning with a client of Western Union's and a good friend of mine who has started a new business whereby they are providing remote testing for football clubs, professional football clubs looking to resume competitive football, for businesses taking numbers of staff or seeking to take numbers of staff back into office environments, and it seems that the testing capability to resume a degree of normality safely is where it needs to be. So, on a personal level, I have confidence that we should see a gradual but sustainable movement toward recovery. And I would hope that the U outcome is what we will experience.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, the city, Manchester, and every city across the UK now will be busier, or England, should I say. And I think I've spoken to a lot of businesses this week, and people are sort of getting into the mindset of going back to work, and conversations have been a lot more positive than in previous weeks. So let's hope we don't get that second spike. It does scare you when you see people lying on the beach, hundreds of people at a time. But yeah, because I think that would be, could have an impact, a big impact long term. So we'll stay positive.
Exactly, and I think it's really important for everybody to consider that the type of recovery that we see will be largely determined by the observation of ongoing social distancing and adhering to these measures. So the fate is in our hands, really.
Yeah.
To ensure that we do the right thing, that we are productive as we can be, whilst adhering to the measures that have been ever so slightly relaxed. But for me, living in the city centre, a very welcome but
Yeah.
relaxation. The fact that I can go out into a quiet part of the countryside now and go for a walk beats walking around Deansgate and Castlefield every single day. So yeah, we have a responsibility, and there are industry sectors that are going to re-emerge from this later in the process. Industry sectors that are suffering the most, like tourism, like hospitality. And actually those industry sectors are relying on people to adhere to social distancing so that they can reopen and re-emerge as quickly as possible, as I'm sure you and I wish them to do so.
Very much so. Yeah, and I think those sectors are going to need additional support from government, because if they can only have half the people in the venues at a certain amount of time, then obviously it's going to impact on their bottom line. We will end on a positive, Mark. So we've been working together now for, how long is it?
We are, I think formally our partnership has been in place for about 18 months, but I think we've known each other and talking for a bit longer than that.
Yeah. And you've obviously been a corporate partner, as you say, for nearly 2 years now, and you've been in touch with another one of our partners, Cube Residential, and our good friend Dave Seed. So do you want to tell us what you've been up to over the past few months and what that's resulted in for both you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, our mutual good friend Dave Seed. Obviously, I've met him on numerous occasions at your more formal and less formal business over recent times, and Dave works within a fantastic business, overseeing managed property, which sees a lot of international investment, and has a lot of international investors based over in Hong Kong who invest in units in Salford Quays, and we questioned when we first engaged whether there was anything that we could collaborate and support each other on, because Dave's business operation is a sterling-based business. Even their Hong Kong investors get paid in pounds. But thankfully, Western Union, although foreign exchange is what we do, what we specialise in, we have an equally powerful payments business and a number of integratable payment solutions to enable automation and reporting and management of payment processing. And with the numbers of payments that Dave was sending over to Hong Kong, we identified that it was a very manual process that the team at Cube were undertaking to make these payments on almost a daily basis, and that from a cost perspective, the cost per payment was still quite high. So we spent the last 6 months in discussions, some formal, some slightly less formal, really looking at Dave's business and how it operates, understanding the payment requirements, understanding the system that he uses at the moment and the challenges that presents to them, but not just the challenges that it creates for the staff at Cube, but the experience that it provides to the investors as well. And we've been able to successfully deliver a payment solution which will make some significant cost savings in terms of the cost of payments to Cube Residential over the next 12 months and beyond, but also created better payment automation. It's taking the team at Cube less time to process these transactions, which is a cost saving in man hours alone, in addition to the cost per payment. And as we continue to work together and collaborate going forward, I hope that we can make that system and that solution more automated, and that actually it will give a better experience and greater flexibility to the investors that Cube support. So it's been a really lovely success story of us, meeting a fellow partner through Downtown in Business, and actually just having a discussion and not really knowing what the opportunity was, but just thinking that there might be one there, and now we've got, what will hopefully be a really successful and long-term relationship.
No, that's great. Well, I've spoken to Dave, and he's equally as excited about the partnership. Before we end, mate, I could never have a conversation with you without bringing the footy up. So the Premier League teams are back in training this week.
They're back in training. A few have got coronavirus, but they're back.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? You think it'll be, I'm guessing, played behind closed doors now?
Yeah. I mean, I think that everybody's aware that the Premier League and the clubs, the Premier League, we're always going to find a way to finish the season. The financial implications in the loss of TV broadcast revenue and commercial revenues were just too great. And to a number of the smaller clubs in the Premier League would probably have sent them under. Those that have got 90% cost of which is payroll for playing staff. So inevitably it will get underway again. It was underway again in Germany this weekend. Don't know whether you watched any of it, mate, but the same. Gave me something to have a cheeky £10 bet on, which I just for old time's sake. But it wasn't the same. I do understand that there are a number of businesses that are in talks with the Premier League about creating a better fan experience for games played behind closed doors, and even trying to create stadium atmospheres in front of no crowd as well. So I'll be fascinated to see what comes of that. I think it's an example of how there is always an opportunity for somebody through times of crisis.
Yeah.
Because these techie organisations that have got solutions for that are probably incredibly busy and probably recruiting to fill the workload. I think inevitably you and I both know that it will get finished. I think there has been talk of there being free-to-air games as well. I think that the discussion that I saw last was that they were going to relax the rule that goes back to the 1960s about a blackout on games between 2:45 and 5:15 on a Saturday, meaning that there could be some free-to-air games for everybody to enjoy. I'm as somebody who goes to games, I'm not overly sure how uplifting it will be. As an Arsenal fan, we've not got a tremendous amount to play for. We're in the FA Cup quarter final, but I'm not overly sure how uplifting it is. But it gets things going again. I think the more interesting thing, and I'd love to get your views on this, is will you and I get to a game next season? Because suggestions are at the moment that Premier League clubs are being advised to make preparations to play the bulk of next season behind closed doors as well.
Yeah, I've not really read much about that. Hope, fingers crossed, because probably like me, you've got a WhatsApp group with the lads who support your team, and we've been reminiscing about previous games we've been to and planning, saying we need to get to more away days when all this is over. But yeah, you never know. Hopefully not, because it was odd watching the German football the weekend. To be honest, I watched about 20 minutes, and it just felt weird. It might be different with the Premier League because it's what I follow week in, week out. But yeah, sport live is always better, isn't it?
Sport live is always better, and I think that if nothing else, all this sport played behind closed doors will reiterate the forgotten value of the supporters.
Yeah.
And that we no longer make a significant contribution in terms of revenues. Ticket revenue versus TV revenue is tiny, but in terms of the whole experience to not just everybody in the crowd and the teams, but everybody watching around the world, we're still a valuable component.
Yeah, massively.
Hopefully, you know, we'll be more than welcome back with open arms as soon as we're able to get to a game again.
Aye. Right, we'll wrap it up there, mate. Thanks for your time. Thanks.
Cheers, Chris. Thanks, mate.
Catch up soon, Mark.
All the best. See ya.